Trump and Elon Musk are quietly dismantling Social Security while telling you it's being protected. Mike Johnson just admitted on national television they're targeting what they call waste and abuse. But the numbers don't add up. The Social Security Administration is already planning to cut 7,000 jobs while Trump spreads completely false claims about fraud. Former Social Security Administration Commissioner warns benefits could be interrupted within 30 to 90 days. Don't let them fool you with doublespeak. Welcome to America Unwrapped.
The Government Accountability Office, a federal government office, has estimated annual fraud of over $500 billion in our nation, and we are working very hard to stop it. We're going to.
When politicians claim Social Security is off the table while simultaneously targeting waste and fraud, what's really happening beneath the surface? Let's decode this political doublespeak that's unfolding right before our eyes.
When House Speaker Mike Johnson carefully states that entitlements aren't being cut while giving Elon Musk authority to hunt for waste and abuse, we're witnessing a classic political maneuver. They're not saying they'll slash your monthly benefit check directly. They're taking a more subtle approach that could be even more devastating. What's particularly alarming is how this administration is already dismantling the Social Security Administration from within. The Social Security Administration recently announced plans to cut approximately 7,000 jobs, reducing its workforce from 57,000 to 50,000 employees. This isn't a minor adjustment. It's a massive reduction that strikes at the heart of the agency's ability to function.
Think about what happens when you cut over 12% of the workforce at an agency responsible for processing benefits for millions of Americans. These aren't just random bureaucratic positions. These are the very people who ensure your benefits arrive on time, who process new applications, and who handle the complex administration of a system millions of Americans depend on.
The consequences could be immediate and severe. Former Social Security Commissioner Martin O'Malley has issued a stark warning about these cuts, stating, "Ultimately, you're going to see the system collapse and an interruption of benefits. I believe you will see that within the next 30 to 90 days. This isn't some distant theoretical problem, it's a crisis that could affect benefit payments within the next 1 to 3 months."
Meanwhile, the rhetoric from key figures reveals their true intentions. Musk has publicly referred to Social Security as a Ponzi scheme, while simultaneously being tasked with identifying waste and fraud within the agency. This creates a troubling dynamic. The person leading the investigation has already declared the entire system fundamentally flawed before examining a single document.
The Doge team's investigation into supposed waste at the Social Security Administration raises serious concerns about both the agency's operations and the security of the sensitive data they might access. When you consider these actions alongside Trump's wildly inaccurate claims about 130,000 Americans over 160 years old receiving benefits, a pattern emerges.
This appears to be part of a calculated strategy. First, dramatically reduce the Social Security Administration workforce. Then, when inevitable service failures occur, point to those failures as evidence the system is broken and requires radical change. It's the equivalent of removing an engine's parts and then declaring the car defective when it won't start.
The stark contradiction between public statements promising to protect Social Security and the actual implementation of policies that undermine it couldn't be more glaring. We're witnessing a strategy straight from the political playbook: create dysfunction, then use that dysfunction to justify more extreme measures.
The fraud fiction, manufacturing a crisis that doesn't exist. This manufactured dysfunction is just the beginning. Trump and Musk's claims about tens of millions of fraudulent Social Security payments paint a picture of an agency hemorrhaging money to ghosts and centenarians. But what happens when we compare these explosive accusations to the actual data from the Inspector General's office? The answer reveals a gap between rhetoric and reality so wide you could drive a campaign bus through it. Let's examine what Trump actually claimed during his address to Congress. Beyond his statement about 130,000 Americans over 160 years old receiving benefits, he's pushed a broader narrative about massive fraud throughout the system. He and Musk have consistently thrown around figures suggesting tens of millions of fraudulent payments are being made. These claims create a powerful narrative about government waste and inefficiency, a perfect justification for drastic intervention.
But here's what the actual data shows. According to the Inspector General's office, between fiscal years 2015 and 2023, the Social Security Administration made nearly $72 billion in improper payments. That sounds like a lot until you realize it represents less than 1% of the total Social Security benefits paid during that entire 8-year period. 1%! Not exactly the massive fraud operation Trump and Musk are describing.
And what about those supposedly ancient Americans still collecting checks? This claim completely misunderstands what's actually happening. The extremely old ages appearing in some Social Security records aren't evidence of fraud at all. They're the result of a programming quirk in the decades-old COBOL system that powers the Social Security Administration's databases. When birth dates are missing or incomplete, the system defaults to a reference point more than 150 years ago. These aren't ghosts collecting checks. They're living Americans whose records contain a technical anomaly.
The math simply doesn't add up on the tens of millions claim either. Given the total number of Social Security beneficiaries, if tens of millions of payments were fraudulent, we'd be talking about a significant percentage of all recipients. The Inspector General's actual findings show something dramatically different.
This manufactured crisis isn't just about misleading numbers. It's serving as justification for potentially dangerous intrusions into sensitive systems. There are serious concerns about the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, attempting to access sensitive information at the Social Security Administration. This information could include private data such as Social Security numbers and medical information for millions of Americans.
Nancy Altman, president of Social Security Works, has warned that a breach of Social Security systems by DOGE would be extremely serious, as the agency holds private information for virtually every American. Think about what's at stake here, not just the integrity of the Social Security program itself, but the personal data of nearly every American citizen.
The manufactured fraud narrative creates a pretext for radical interventions, while simultaneously undermining public confidence in the entire system. When people are repeatedly told that Social Security is rife with fraud and dysfunction, they become more open to dramatic changes or cuts that might otherwise be politically impossible.
The tax cut trap: how Trump's gift actually threatens your benefits. Beyond the manufactured fraud claims, Trump's economic proposals pose a far greater danger to Social Security's long-term viability. His tax plan includes a seemingly generous offer to seniors, eliminating federal taxes on Social Security benefits. It sounds like free money, right? But there's a trillion-dollar catch that could force devastating benefit cuts within just a few years. Let's be clear about what Trump is actually proposing. Right now, some Social Security recipients, primarily those with additional income sources, pay federal taxes on a portion of their benefits. This taxation isn't arbitrary. It was deliberately designed to strengthen the program's financial foundation. By eliminating these taxes, Trump's plan would initially put more money in some seniors' pockets, making it politically appealing. But this short-term gain masks a catastrophic long-term consequence. The taxation of Social Security benefits isn't just another government revenue stream. It's a critical funding mechanism for the program itself. Over the next decade alone, this taxation is projected to generate nearly $944 billion that goes directly back into the Social Security Trust Fund. Trump's proposal would eliminate this entire revenue source. To understand why this matters, you need to know how Social Security actually functions financially. The program relies on three main funding sources: payroll taxes from current workers, interest earned on trust fund reserves, and the taxation of benefits. Remove any one of these pillars, and the entire structure becomes dangerously unstable. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget has done the math, and their findings are alarming.
They estimate that Trump's tax proposals, including the elimination of taxes on Social Security benefits, would increase the program's deficit by approximately $1.85 trillion over the next decade. This isn't a minor budgetary hiccup. It's a financial catastrophe for a program already facing funding challenges. Most Americans don't realize that Social Security's Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund is already projected to be depleted by 2033 under current conditions.
Trump's tax proposal would accelerate this timeline dramatically, potentially moving the depletion date up to 2031. When that fund runs dry, automatic benefit cuts kick in. We're talking about a potential 21% reduction in payments to every Social Security recipient. It's particularly ironic that Trump's proposal would undermine a key element of the 1983 Social Security amendments, a bipartisan solution crafted during the Reagan administration that helped save the program during a previous funding crisis. That legislation introduced the taxation of benefits specifically to strengthen Social Security's finances, allowing up to 50% of benefits to be taxed based on income thresholds. The situation becomes even more concerning when you consider Trump's other tax proposals. He's also called for eliminating taxes on tips and overtime pay, both of which would further reduce payroll tax revenue flowing into Social Security. Each of these proposals might sound appealing to voters, but together they form a perfect storm that would devastate the program's financial foundation. The stark reality of our Social Security system is more alarming than most Americans realize. With 80–90% of retirees depending on these benefits to cover their basic expenses, what's happening now isn't just concerning, it's potentially catastrophic. The trust fund is already projected to run short by 2033, which could trigger devastating 21% benefit cuts if nothing changes. What we're witnessing isn't random mismanagement or honest debate about improvements. It's a calculated dismantling disguised as efficiency. The workforce reductions, the manufactured fraud crisis, and the misleading tax proposals all point toward the same goal: creating enough dysfunction to justify radical changes to a system millions of Americans have paid into their entire lives. Nancy Altman from Social Security Works put it perfectly when she warned about the real dangers. Someone could literally erase your earnings record, making it impossible to collect the benefits you've earned. This isn't about protecting your retirement. It's about protecting powerful interests at your expense. The time to recognize these tactics and demand genuine transparency is now, before it's too late.